Hello everyone, Edward Reardon here. It is 5 a.m. and I've been up since 3. You may ask, why would I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning? And it goes back to 20 years ago when I lived on the Guru Nanak Gurdwara Ashram in Phoenix, Arizona, and I was studying Kundalini Yoga. And this was the way of the yogis. They would get up at 3:30 in the morning, take a cold shower, didn't matter what time of year it was, go to the ashram, do Kundalini Yoga until the sun came up. And I did. Now, I get up between 3 and 4 in the morning. I take my cold shower. Cold only, no hot. I haven't had a hot shower since April. Do my meditation, my breath, my pranayams, and then do my remote viewing. But today, I want to talk about something very, very important. To any aspiring remote viewer, and this goes to my own personal brain research into the brain. And I've been doing these experiments for many, many, many years. And in this one here, this was from 6 years ago. The title of this video was Remote Viewing, My Contribution. Any neuroscientists paying attention? ? And that was out of frustration because I was reaching out to some of those places and nobody would get back to me, and it seemed like I'm putting on all of this novel content, and I was getting no response. Look at this, 355 views in 6 years, 275 views, unimpeded input versus random. I mean, this is just, luckily YouTube will keep it. I've done a lot of work. I have, let me do my quick plugs here. Crypto viewing, I'll have the link below. Very proud to be on the team. We do great work. And I also have my own personal Patreon. And here's where a lot of additional of my exploratory work I do in my Patreon, as much as possible. Anyway, got them plugs out of the way. I was doing a video of some experiments that I posted on my Patreon site of some, I call them sensitivity drills. These ones were more I call them image recognition sensitivity drills, and they're all based on online targets and online target pools. I just use them to stimulate the parts of my brain that become stimulated during an actual remote viewing. Then I bring my awareness into that part of my brain where the stimulus is happening to experience the input, and then I'll go and I'll research that part of my brain to see what part of my brain that is getting stimulated. It's like my own personal MRI or something like that. But this one here is one example. All right, I'm going through. I am getting a visual representation of something that reminds me of a circus, and it has the big wheel there. I couldn't remember the name, Ferris wheel. So I look at the feedback photo, and here I'm like, oh, there's a clock there, but Lo and behold, in the background, there's the Ferris wheel. This looks like an amusement park or something like that, which correlates to my circus thing and the big wheel here. So after that, I wanted to go and do a little more research on that part of my brain that was dealing with an image representation. And I came upon this, and I never heard of this before. Aphantasia. Aphantasia. What a cool word, man. It's a very cool word, but I don't like the word because it means to not have imagination. But what the idea represents is the inability to visualize, otherwise known as image-free imagination. I had never heard of this before. Apparently, it's relatively new, a new study, we'll put it that way, for something that has been that had been kind of quote-unquote discovered back in the 1880s, but as it says here in the article, it's mostly forgotten for about a century. And then somebody in the past decade did a full research on it with patients and people and stuff like that. And then he gave it a name, Aphantasia. But the name means no imagination. So even though that's a very cool word, Aphantasia, by definition, it is an inaccurate word to describe the mental phenomena that it's trying to decipher. Because if someone does not have mental imagery or the ability to visualize, that does not mean that they don't have imagination. That only means they do not have a visual imagination. Fantasia, by definition, is imagination or fantasy, but mostly it means visual imagery, imagination. But there's all kinds of imagination. I talked about this many years ago in my remote viewing videos of the use of the term imagination, where as a generic kind of lazy form of defining something, they would say, "Oh, that's just your imagination. You gotta, drop it down as an AOL or whatever." And I had a problem with that because there's many different types of imagination, and there's a lot more going on in the brain that is not imagination. Imagination only being one of a whole array of mental processes that are taking place during an actual remote viewing. Aphantasia. This is an interesting kind of image here of showing somebody with hyperphantasia, or the ability to visualize very clearly. This would probably fall under the term of like a photographic memory, or in those realms. And this is I think a more average person. So you have activity in the frontal cortex, and you have activity in the visual cortex, more or less. So people who have aphantasia don't have any visual mental images happening at all. It's blank in their mind. The memory comes from concepts and words, mostly conceptuals. Now, why would I be interested in this? Well, I'm interested in this because I was born with a substantial degree of aphantasia myself, and I struggled with it and not understanding it. And it wasn't until in the late 1980s, when I was a teenager, that I came upon the idea that people had photographic memory, which I couldn't really comprehend because I didn't have that kind of imagery in my mind. Now, I want to qualify this real quick. Having aphantasia, meaning when you close your eyes, you're trying to imagine things or recall memories, there are none. It's just the mind is just black. That does not mean that people do not have vivid dreams or even lucid dreams. I did see an example of a woman who has aphantasia, and she is an avid lucid dreamer. Lucid dreaming, for those who don't know, is when you are dreaming and you become awake in your dream and you realize that you are dreaming. I am a lucid dreamer myself, and if you've had lucid dreams, you know that you're in like a hyper technicolor space in your mind. So what that indicates to me is that the mental process is taking place in a dream state or lucid dreaming, and compared to what can be termed as aphantasia, or as in a waking state of having no visual mental imagery. Two different parts of the brain. There are two different things that are taking place. So, what did I do? Once I realized that there was a phenomena called photographic memory, I would ask my friends, how do you remember? How do you remember things? And I would begin to get the reinforcement that the people who did really good in school, they had a very easy ability to visualize what they were being asked to recall, to put on the test. I failed. I was an D and F student because I couldn't recall visually the things that I had learned. So it was extremely difficult. It was literally like reaching into blackness and trying to pull something through. And it never happened. It was very frustrating. So I began to work on visual memory. And I got a program in the early 90s, Kevin Trudeau, on how to visualize memory by association. And I worked it and worked it and worked it, and I began to develop the ability to perceive images in my mind. And I had to work it and work it and work it and work it. And if I was out and about, I would see something, and I would have to work it and say, all right, I would look at something and say, okay, now I'm going to close my eyes, and I want to pull up that image of those things and be able to identify everything correctly, see the image. Not always successful, but it's constantly working and working and working that muscle. What does this have to do with remote viewing? It has to do with remote viewing because there are some styles of remote viewing, methodologies of remote viewing that do deal with mental imagery. There are other styles of remote viewing that do not. That tend to want to not address, I don't want to say that, they want to take mental imagery and put it off to the side, not get distracted by it, because it might be quote-unquote imagination. Whereas there are other methodologies that rely mostly on visual memory. What's important about that is that the phenomenon that is known as aphantasia is new. And from the research that I've been doing, it's kind of rare, but not that rare. They were saying like 1 in 50 or something like that. So there may be people who may go into remote viewing training. They may have aphantasia or a degree of it, and trying to pull up images or see a target may be impossible. What they may get instead is a conceptual of an image, a concept of an image but seeing an image may not be possible for them. Whereas on the other spectrum, like controlled remote viewing, TRV, and the Ingo Swann methodology, they shy away from the image thing. But what I have come to realize over the years with my work is that methodologies tend to be based on the person who developed the methodology. In the visual one, which primarily is in the Hawaiian Remote Viewers Guild, is based on the kind of the quote-unquote back engineering of a fellow named Richard Ireland. Richard Ireland had what would probably could be termed hyperphantasia, where he would see very clearly in images in his mind. Very clearly. Not everybody is going to be able to do that. Ingo Swann's controlled remote viewing does not like to deal with images. And so there may be people who are drawn to that style because mental imagery is not possible for them, or just not easy. They may have like an average amount of fantasia, or an average amount of aphantasia, where certain amounts of imagery are very unclear or foggy imagery may be possible for them, if at all. But for me personally, this is why I have chosen to take what is useful, get rid of all the rest. I don't follow anyone. I just take what works, and I do remote viewing as I do it, just as Richard Ireland did it as he did, and everybody else followed him. Ingo Swann back engineered what he did, and everybody followed him. So they're doing it as Ingo did it. They're doing it as Richard Ireland did it, as best they can. I'll take pieces from it all, and like I said before, remote viewing, first you learn how to do it, and then you spend the rest of your life learning how you do it. So aphantasia, something to very seriously consider if you're into remote viewing, or you're new to remote viewing, or if you're struggling with remote viewing. It is something to consider. What is happening in your brain? That's why I have all of these videos here. You can go back, look at my stuff. I have years and years of exploration into what is taking place in my brain. You know what's funny about this one here, where I was like, I put out this video, saying, where are the neuroscientists? Why aren't they reaching out to me? And I recently, it was brought to my attention that they may be watching me now. So better late than never, and I hope they learn something. And if they steal my work, they better give me credit. Something else I want to talk about too is a couple of my trademarks here. Back years ago, I came up with what I wanted to call my work, and there were two avenues: perceptual expressionism and abstract perceptualism, to best describe my work. Those are my trademarks. Don't steal them. Don't try to steal them. So I want to throw that out there too. So that's this video. Check out my own personal Patreon for more examples of that. This is my YouTube page. All this is free. I got tons of stuff on there. All this stuff is, what some of the neuroscientists are out there stealing my work, trying to take credit for all my hard work, all my novel work. Anyway, hope you enjoy this. Hope you learn something. I'm continually learning, continually finding new things. I just found out about Fantasia 2 days ago, and now it's all I keep thinking about. Anyway, the best is yet to come. Hope you're having a great day. See you next time.